The great thinkers of the past understood a profound truth. The objects of our attention inevitably influence our character. That is why we must guard our minds with the utmost care. Like a fortress built to withstand siege, our minds must not be left open to invasion. What we consume, whom we surround ourselves with, and the thoughts we allow to take root shape who we are and who we become. Think of your mind as a citadel. Would you allow an enemy to walk freely through your gates? Would you invite thieves into your home to ransack your belongings? No rational person would. And yet, every day, many allow damaging influences to penetrate their consciousness without resistance. They surrender their attention to distractions, vices, and negativity. They allow resentment and impulse to dictate their actions. They lower their defenses and let their emotions be hijacked by external forces. A Stoic does not live this way. A Stoic is deliberate, discerning, and disciplined. A Stoic recognizes that the first and most important battleground is the mind. If you lose control of your mind, you have lost control of yourself. This video will explore how to protect yourself, how to guard your mind, and how to fortify your soul against the corrosive influences of the world. We will focus on how to build defenses, how to recognize the threats to our peace and discipline. Then we will explore the countermeasures, the weapons of the Stoic that allow us to maintain control and strengthen our inner resolve. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Enemies at the Gates. What corrupts the mind? A great fortress does not crumble overnight. It is weakened gradually. Small cracks, left unattended, expand over time. The same applies to your mind. The erosion of your mental strength does not happen in an instant. It happens when you allow unworthy influences to take hold. Modern life is designed to scatter your attention. Endless notifications, social media, mindless entertainment. These things demand your focus without giving anything of real value in return. When your mind is constantly pulled in different directions, it is impossible to think deeply, to reflect, or to cultivate wisdom. The Stoics valued contemplation. Marcus Aurelius spent hours writing his meditations, not for the world, but for himself. He knew that without time for deep thought, wisdom would wither, much like an unwatered tree slowly losing its vitality. The mind, left unattended, becomes overgrown with weeds of distraction, and soon the fertile ground of intellect turns barren. Without deliberate focus, insight becomes dull, and without careful reflection, clarity is replaced with confusion. The Stoics recognized that moments of solitude and contemplation are not indulgences, but necessities, the very foundation upon which sound judgment and inner peace are built. To neglect them is to invite chaos into the mind and surrender to a life dictated by external noise rather than internal wisdom. Take control of your attention. Schedule time away from distractions. Read something meaningful. Write down your thoughts. Don't let your mind be hijacked by triviality. A man becomes what he surrounds himself with. If you spend your time with the bitter, the resentful, the envious, you will absorb their negativity. If you expose yourself to shallow thinking, gossip, and trivial arguments, your mind will start to mirror them. The Stoics taught the importance of carefully choosing whom and what we allow into our lives. Epictetus warned against associating with people who weaken our resolve. Seneca wrote that we should be deliberate in choosing our friends because they influence the way we think and act. Do the people and influences in your life elevate you or drain you? Choose to spend time with those who inspire growth, wisdom, and virtue. The easiest way to lose control of your mind is to surrender to impulse. Anger, lust, greed, and envy are thieves that creep in when we are not vigilant. A person ruled by impulse is like a ship without a rudder. They react rather than respond. They chase fleeting pleasures rather than enduring fulfillment. The Stoics taught that true freedom comes not from indulging every desire, but from mastering oneself. The next time you feel an impulse rise, pause, observe it. Ask yourself, is this in line with my values? Will this serve me in the long run? If the answer is no, let it pass like a cloud drifting across the sky. Chapter 2. Guarding the mind, building mental fortitude. The battle against external influences is ongoing. You cannot simply remove distractions, negativity, and impulses. You must replace them with something stronger. You must train your mind to resist, much like a warrior honing his skill in preparation for battle. A mind left untrained is vulnerable, like an unguarded city, susceptible to whatever force comes its way. But when trained, fortified, and disciplined, the mind becomes an impenetrable fortress, able to withstand the assaults of distraction, external pressures, and emotional turbulence. To cultivate this resilience, one must develop a regimen of mental strengthening. Just as a soldier drills his movements daily, so too must we train our thoughts and responses. We must practice mindfulness, self-discipline, and critical thinking. We must engage in deep contemplation and philosophical study to sharpen our intellect and clarify our values. Without active training, the mind defaults to weakness, to complacency, fear, and indulgence. Left untended, it becomes a battleground where impulses and distractions run rampant. The untrained mind is like a ship without a captain, drifting aimlessly in a sea of external influences, susceptible to every passing storm. But through daily effort, we can cultivate an unshakable mental state, one that remains steadfast in the face of adversity. Strength of mind does not come by chance. It is forged through intention and discipline, much like the body is strengthened through rigorous physical training. A Stoic does not wait for hardships to reveal their mental fortitude. They prepare, they train, and they strengthen themselves before the storm comes. The wise anticipate difficulties and fortify themselves with patience, understanding, and self-control, so that when challenges arise, they do not crumble, but stand firm. Consider the great warriors of history. They did not simply hope for strength in the heat of battle. They trained relentlessly in times of peace, so that when the fight came, their movements were instinctive. Similarly, the Stoic must prepare the mind in times of tranquility, ensuring that when the storm of emotion, stress, or adversity comes, they remain immovable. This preparation is done through daily exercises, controlling one's breath, observing one's emotions without reacting, enduring small discomforts to build tolerance, and practicing voluntary hardship to reduce attachment to luxury. Mental fortitude is not a natural gift, but a cultivated skill like any other. The path to mastery lies in repetition, in choosing discipline over ease, wisdom over indulgence, and action over stagnation. Just as a sculptor chisels away at stone to reveal the masterpiece beneath, the Stoic carves away at weaknesses, refining their mind into a fortress, impervious to the trivial distractions and fears that dominate the unprepared. To master the mind is to master life itself. A disciplined mind is an examined mind. The Stoics practiced self-reflection as a way to strengthen their mental clarity, understanding that true wisdom is not simply gained through knowledge, but through deep introspection and consistent refinement. Each day, Marcus Aurelius reviewed his actions, not as a means of self-criticism, but as a method of growth, refining his thoughts like a sculptor chiseling away at excess stone. Seneca wrote letters to distill his thoughts, using writing as a tool to process his experiences and reinforce his principles. He saw self-examination as a necessity, a way to sharpen the mind against the dullness of routine and the corruption of unchecked impulses. Epictetus reminded his students that philosophy must be applied, not just studied. that knowing without doing is the same as having a sword and never learning how to wield it. Reflection, when combined with action, creates the foundation for true wisdom. To examine one's mind is to ensure that it is not being led astray by external distractions or unexamined beliefs. It is to ask, what thoughts dominated my day? Were my actions in alignment with my values? Where did I falter, and how can I improve? Without this habit, the mind becomes a slave to impulse, easily swayed by emotion, pride, and external influence. The examined life is a disciplined one, for it forces us to be honest about our weaknesses, to recognize where we have fallen short, and to commit to a path of constant improvement. The Stoic does not seek perfection but progress, one step closer to clarity, one step further from chaos with each passing day. Start a daily review. Ask yourself, what did I do well today? Where did I falter? How can I improve tomorrow? Many mistake humility for weakness, but what is more fragile than a person who cannot admit they are wrong? What is weaker than a mind that refuses to learn, to resist growth, to refuse change, to cling desperately to false pride? These are the true signs of weakness. A mind that is closed off to learning is a fortress without reinforcements, an empty shell that offers no protection. It is not humility that makes one weak, but the inability to see beyond one's ego, the fear of admitting fault, and the stubbornness to refuse new wisdom. The Stoics knew that arrogance is a form of blindness. A person who thinks they already know everything is incapable of growth, for they have built walls so high that no new knowledge can enter. True strength comes from the ability to see oneself clearly, to accept flaws, and to work toward improvement. This is why the wisest among us are often the most humble. They understand that life is an endless path of refinement, a journey where no one ever truly arrives at complete mastery. The mind that refuses to learn stagnates like still water, while the mind that embraces wisdom flows like a river, carving new paths and shaping new landscapes. Humility is not submission. It is an active practice of seeking truth beyond personal pride. It is a weapon against arrogance, a defense against complacency, and a key to deeper understanding. A person who can say, "I was wrong and I want to improve," is a person with unshakable inner strength. They are not tethered to the need for external validation, but instead grounded in the pursuit of genuine wisdom. What then is stronger? The man who believes he knows all and refuses to change, or the man who recognizes his limitations and actively seeks to transcend them? The answer is clear to those who have cultivated the courage to be humble. True humility is not passivity, nor is it a surrender of power. It is the ultimate sign of confidence, of a mind so secure that it does not fear exposure to new ideas, nor does it shrink in the face of challenge. The Stoic understands this and trains themselves daily to embrace the strength of humility. Humility is not a sign of weakness, but a mark of wisdom. It takes a great deal of internal security to admit one's flaws and to recognize gaps in knowledge. A fragile mind clings to certainty and defends its ignorance out of fear, while a strong mind welcomes challenges and seeks enlightenment. The Stoics knew that arrogance is a self-imposed prison, a wall that blocks the path to growth. When a person believes they have nothing left to learn, they cease to progress. The mind, like a sword, must be continually sharpened to remain effective, otherwise it dulls and becomes useless in the battles of life. A humble person does not view learning as an admission of failure, but as an opportunity for refinement. They understand that life is a vast and ever-changing arena where no one holds absolute mastery. Even the wisest figures in history, the very philosophers whose teachings have endured for centuries, were students of life until their last breath. Marcus Aurelius, despite being emperor of Rome, often reminded himself in meditations that he was merely a student of virtue, constantly striving toward wisdom. True power lies not in the illusion of knowing everything, but in the continuous pursuit of understanding. To embrace humility is to embrace strength. It is to stand firm in the knowledge that learning and self-improvement never end. It is to release the burden of ego, to view correction as guidance rather than humiliation, and to welcome challenges as chances to refine one's character. The Stoic does not fear being proven wrong, for they understand that correction is a gift that leads to clarity. They do not shrink in the face of criticism, for they know that true confidence comes not from pride, but from self-awareness. Thus, the strongest person is not the one who asserts dominance through false certainty, but the one who humbly acknowledges their limitations and actively seeks to rise beyond them. This is the mindset of a true Stoic, the unshakable foundation upon which wisdom, strength, and resilience are built. The mind that accepts humility does not waver. It stands firmer than ever, unbothered by petty judgments and anchored in the relentless pursuit of truth. Remind yourself that you are always a student. Seek wisdom from others. Do not let ego prevent you from seeing the truth. Some believe that being compassionate is a sign of vulnerability, but the Stoics understood that only the strong can be truly compassionate. Why? Because it requires restraint, understanding, and a deep sense of self-assurance. It is easy to act out of anger, to let emotions dictate actions, and to react impulsively to perceived slights. But true power lies in self-mastery, the ability to control one's reactions rather than be controlled by them. Seneca wrote that anger is a sign of weakness. When someone insults you, the easy response is to lash out, to retaliate with words or actions meant to cause harm in return. But this only reveals a lack of control, a surrender to external forces. The strong response is to remain unmoved, to assess the situation with clarity, and to recognize that another's insult reflects more about them than about you. To let anger dictate your response is to hand over control of your mind to another. To remain steady and composed is to show true power. The truly powerful are not swayed by the actions of others. They remain centered in their own principles. They understand that compassion does not mean allowing others to walk over them, nor does it mean being naive to manipulation or malice. Rather, it means choosing one's response with wisdom and purpose. Compassion is an active choice, a demonstration of strength, and a sign that one's emotions are governed rather than unchecked. It is a form of discipline, an exercise in maintaining inner peace despite external chaos. The Stoics recognized that to respond with wisdom rather than emotion is the highest form of self-discipline. To meet hostility with composure, to counter cruelty with restraint, and to replace bitterness with understanding requires far more strength than mere aggression. The weak succumb to their impulses. The strong shape their responses with intention. Compassion, when rooted in wisdom, becomes an unshakable fortress against the chaos of the world. True compassion is not passive, but active. It is not a matter of letting others do as they please without consequence, but of responding in a way that preserves both self-respect and principle. The Stoic does not allow injustice or cruelty to persist unchecked, but they do not allow it to corrupt their inner state either. They choose their battles wisely, recognizing that the highest form of resistance is not always through force, but through wisdom and integrity. A compassionate person does not react. They respond. There is also great strength in the ability to empathize without losing oneself. Many fear that showing kindness is an invitation for exploitation, but true Stoic compassion does not mean being blind to deception. It means seeing the world clearly, acknowledging both the good and the bad in people, while maintaining a firm grasp on one's values. To be compassionate is to understand human nature and to choose the higher path. even when faced with cruelty or betrayal. The practice of compassion also extends to oneself. Just as it is important to respond to others with wisdom and understanding, it is equally essential to show that same level of grace to ourselves. We will falter, we will make mistakes, and we will struggle. The Stoic does not punish themselves endlessly for their failings, but instead learns from them, refines their character, and continues forward with renewed clarity. Harsh self-judgment, when taken too far, can become a barrier to growth rather than a tool for improvement. Thus, to be truly compassionate is to be truly strong. It is to face the world with an open heart but an unwavering mind. It is to recognize that kindness is not weakness, but a form of wisdom. A Stoic understands that inner peace is not found in dominance over others, but in mastery over oneself. True power lies in choosing how we respond to the world, not in letting the world dictate who we become. The next time someone wrongs you, instead of reacting with anger, pause. Consider, is their behavior a reflection of me or of them? Choose to respond with wisdom, not emotion. The world is full of influences that seek to pull you away from yourself. If you are not careful, you will become a reflection of everything around you rather than the master of your own mind. But the Stoic way is different. It is the way of self-command, of vigilance, of discipline. Guard your mind like a fortress. Protect your attention like the most valuable treasure. Do not allow triviality, negativity, or impulse to erode your inner peace. Your mind is your own. Defend it well. Now that we have fortified our mental defenses and understand the threats to our inner stability, we must turn our focus toward the weapons of the Stoic. Defense alone is not enough. We must also cultivate the qualities that allow us to meet challenges with clarity and strength. These weapons are not swords or shields, but principles, habits, and ways of thinking that make us unshakable. Let us explore them. Chapter 3. The Sentinel of Thought, Filtering Mental Influences. Your mind is a sacred space, and what enters it shapes your perception, emotions, and decisions. A person who fails to filter their thoughts is like a city with open gates, vulnerable to any invader that chooses to enter. Without vigilance, negativity, falsehoods, and unnecessary distractions take hold, corrupting judgment and weakening resolve. If left unchecked, these thoughts establish strongholds, reinforcing cycles of worry, anxiety, and frustration that become increasingly difficult to break. The Stoics taught that the mind must be guarded with discipline. Just as a wise ruler carefully selects whom they allow into their court, we must carefully choose which thoughts and external influences we permit into our consciousness. Thoughts are not harmless. They create the foundations of our beliefs and determine our actions. If you allow unchecked anxieties, irrational fears, or toxic influences to take root, they will cloud your clarity and distort your sense of purpose. Like weeds in a garden, negative thoughts, once embedded, spread rapidly and suffocate the seeds of wisdom, gratitude, and discipline. To maintain sovereignty over our minds, we must recognize that every piece of information we consume, every interaction we engage in, and every belief we hold contributes to the architecture of our inner world. If we allow gossip, fear, and insecurity to dominate our mental landscape, we will build our reality upon weak and unstable foundations. But if we choose to cultivate patience, reason, and virtue, our mind becomes a fortress, impervious to the trivialities and distractions that plague the undisciplined. Consider how much of your daily suffering is caused not by reality itself, but by the thoughts you allow to circulate in your mind. A minor inconvenience can become a source of immense stress when magnified by unfiltered worry. A single negative comment can erode confidence when it is given excessive attention. Gossip, envy, self-doubt, and resentment thrive when given energy. If left unfiltered, they lead to emotional turmoil and unnecessary suffering. The Stoic guards their mind like a vigilant sentinel, allowing entry only to thoughts that serve reason, virtue, and tranquility. Filtering thoughts is not an act of avoidance, but an act of refinement. It is not about suppressing emotions, but about directing attention toward what is constructive. It is about making the conscious decision to dwell only on what strengthens rather than what weakens. The Stoic understands that while they cannot always control their first thought, they can always control whether they entertain it. The key is to pause, assess, and choose wisely. The next time a thought arises, whether it be self-criticism, fear, or frustration, pause and assess it. Ask yourself, is this thought useful? Does it serve my principles? Would I allow someone else to plant this idea in my mind, or am I doing so unconsciously? Strengthen your mental filter and choose only thoughts that fortify your character. Take active measures to cultivate a disciplined mind by setting time for reflection, eliminating unnecessary noise, and reinforcing beliefs that empower rather than degrade. Chapter 4. The Discipline of Desire and Aversion. Epictetus taught that the secret to tranquility is to align our desires with what is within our control and to remove our aversion toward what is inevitable. Many suffer because they desire things they cannot have or resist events they cannot change. This misalignment creates frustration and anxiety, trapping individuals in a cycle of dissatisfaction, longing, and distress. They pour their energy into wishing things were different, yearning for outcomes beyond their influence and resisting the flow of life itself. Instead of wishing for circumstances to be different, the Stoic adapts. They find peace not by controlling the external world, but by mastering their internal state. They do not waste energy resenting what is beyond them. Instead, they focus on what is within their grasp, their actions, their thoughts, and their character. They understand that attachment to specific outcomes is a form of self-imposed suffering. The world is unpredictable, and events will not always unfold according to our expectations. But the Stoic does not see this as a tragedy. They see it as a truth to be accepted. To desire what is outside of one's control is to chain oneself to an unpredictable and often indifferent reality. The Stoic learns to want only what they can attain through their own effort, virtue, wisdom, and discipline. They release their grip on external outcomes, understanding that disappointment is born from unrealistic expectations. They do not lament the rain, but learn how to walk through it without complaint. They do not despair when misfortune strikes, but instead focus on how to respond with dignity and strength. This does not mean the Stoic is passive or indifferent to the world. They work diligently toward their goals, they strive for excellence, and they put effort into their endeavors. But they do so with an awareness that the results are not always within their control. They cultivate an attitude of acceptance, knowing that their true power lies not in bending the world to their will, but in shaping their own character regardless of what the world brings. Reflect on your desires. Are they focused on things within your control, or are they tied to external forces? Redirect your energy toward what you can influence and release what you cannot. When you catch yourself frustrated or anxious, pause and ask, am I trying to control the uncontrollable? If so, shift your focus inward, where your true power resides. Chapter 5. The Virtue of Action. Philosophy is not meant to be theoretical, it is meant to be lived. The Stoics did not believe in passively contemplating virtue, but in actively embodying it. Knowledge without action is useless. Strength without application is wasted. Without practice, philosophy is nothing more than words, hollow and powerless. True wisdom is not found in grand speeches or intellectual debates, but in the quiet, disciplined practice of virtue in everyday life. The Stoic does not merely accumulate knowledge, they apply it. They do not philosophize about justice, temperance, or courage. They live it, regardless of whether anyone is watching. A Stoic does not merely speak of resilience, they practice it. They do not discuss discipline, they embody it. Every day is an opportunity to train in wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. Each action, no matter how small, is a chance to refine the self. When faced with adversity, they do not simply endure, they act with purpose, maintaining their principles regardless of external conditions. They recognize that strength is not something inherited, but cultivated. Just as the body grows stronger through resistance and strain, so too does the mind grow sharper through challenges and trials. A soldier does not become formidable by reading about warfare, but by facing the hardship of battle. Likewise, a Stoic does not become resilient by merely understanding virtue, but by applying it in the fires of daily existence. It is easy to speak of fortitude when life is calm, but true Stoicism is tested in moments of difficulty, when patience is stretched, when justice is inconvenient, when courage demands sacrifice. It is in these moments that philosophy must come alive. The Stoic does not wait for the perfect time to practice virtue. They do so every moment. They recognize that every interaction, every obstacle, and every decision is an opportunity to train their character. They do not postpone their pursuit of wisdom for a later day, for they understand that time is fleeting, and the only moment within their grasp is the present one. To delay the practice of virtue is to neglect it entirely. They do not seek validation for their actions, for they understand that discipline is its own reward. Unlike those who perform good deeds for applause or behave virtuously only when it is convenient, the Stoic acts in accordance with reason, regardless of who is watching. Their morality is not contingent on external recognition, but is rooted in their unwavering commitment to excellence. They hold themselves to a higher standard, not because others expect it, but because they demand it of themselves. They do not ask whether they feel like being resilient, disciplined, or just. They simply act according to reason. Feelings come and go, emotions fluctuate, but principles must remain constant. The Stoic understands that waiting for motivation is a fool's errand, for motivation is unreliable. Instead, they cultivate the discipline to do what must be done, even in the absence of inspiration. Their principles are non-negotiable, not subject to the whims of emotion or circumstance. They do not allow external events to dictate their character, nor do they compromise their integrity when faced with adversity. A Stoic remains steadfast in their values, unshaken by the turbulence of life. They do not ask, "Is this easy?" but rather, "Is this right?" In doing so, they forge an unbreakable will, capable of withstanding any trial, any hardship, and any temptation that seeks to lead them astray. Choose one Stoic principle, whether it be patience, courage, or discipline, and actively apply it throughout your day. Do not simply consider it in theory, but test it in action. When you find yourself growing impatient, remind yourself that patience is not an act of suffering but a form of self-mastery. When you face fear, see it as an opportunity to practice courage, to push forward rather than retreat. When tempted to indulge in laziness or excess, call upon discipline and recognize that true freedom lies in self-restraint, not in indulgence. Observe how this practice changes your interactions and mental state. Notice how choosing patience over frustration alters your response to difficulty. See how practicing discipline strengthens your will, making you more resistant to impulse. Recognize how courage, when exercised consistently, diminishes fear and builds resilience. Over time, these practices become habits, and these habits define your character. Let philosophy be a force that shapes your character, not just an idea that exists in your mind. Do not let wisdom remain trapped in books or in the words of ancient philosophers. Bring it to life through action. With every choice, with every challenge, with every opportunity, demonstrate through your behavior that you are not merely a student of Stoicism, but a living embodiment of its principles. Chapter 6. Finding freedom through release. One of the greatest burdens on the human mind is attachment to outcomes, to material things, to past regrets, and to expectations that reality should conform to our desires. The Stoic understands that clinging to what cannot be held leads only to suffering. True peace comes from letting go of what is beyond our grasp, embracing impermanence, and accepting life as it unfolds without resistance. Seneca advised contemplating loss, not as a morbid exercise, but as a means of strengthening the mind. If one learns to live with the understanding that all things are temporary, then nothing can truly disturb them. They learn to love without possessiveness, to strive without desperation, and to experience without clinging. Instead of fearing the inevitable, they prepare their minds to face it with resilience and grace. The Stoic recognizes that attachment is often rooted in illusion, the belief that we have control over things we do not. When we obsess over the outcomes of our efforts, we place our happiness on a fragile foundation. If we tie our sense of worth to external success, we make ourselves vulnerable to disappointment. If we rely on possessions to define us, we become enslaved to them. If we refuse to let go of past mistakes, we anchor ourselves in regret rather than growth. To detach does not mean to stop caring or striving. It means to do so without dependence on results. The Stoic works diligently, loves deeply, and seeks wisdom earnestly, but they do so with an open hand rather than a clenched fist. They pour their energy into what they can control, their actions, their mindset, their virtues, while remaining indifferent to what is beyond them. They understand that true mastery lies not in controlling the world, but in mastering their response to it. True detachment is not apathy, it is liberation from unnecessary suffering. Many believe that caring deeply means clinging tightly, but the Stoic knows that attachment often leads to anxiety, fear, and an unhealthy dependence on outcomes. By relinquishing their need for external validation, a Stoic cultivates inner peace, knowing that their fulfillment is rooted in their character, not in possessions, achievements, or fleeting circumstances. When we let go of unnecessary attachments, we experience a profound lightness. The burdens of expectation, fear, and regret dissolve, leaving behind a mind that is unshaken by the fluctuations of fortune. We find freedom not by acquiring more, but by needing less. We find clarity not by demanding certainty, but by embracing change. This detachment allows us to act without desperation, to love without possession, and to strive without fear of failure. It grants us the ability to remain composed in the face of adversity and graceful in moments of loss. A detached mind is not indifferent, but free. It does not avoid hardship, but faces it without being consumed by it. The Stoic recognizes that attachment often stems from illusion, the false belief that we can control more than we truly can. By accepting impermanence, they break free from the illusion of ownership and control, understanding that nothing truly belongs to them. This perspective fosters gratitude, for when we recognize the temporary nature of all things, we learn to appreciate them fully without being enslaved by the fear of losing them. Reflect on something you fear losing, whether it be a possession, a relationship, or an opportunity. Ask yourself, if this were gone tomorrow, would I still be whole? Train yourself to appreciate without attachment. Remind yourself that everything in life is borrowed, and to hold it lightly is to hold it wisely. Practice letting go, not by withdrawing from life, but by engaging with it fully, knowing that your peace does not depend on what you hold, but on what you master within. Chapter 7. The Fortress of Focus, Mastering Attention. Attention is the currency of the modern world. Every company, every platform, and every distraction is competing for a piece of your focus. The untrained mind is easily lured away, drifting from one impulse to the next. But the Stoic understands that a mind without control over its attention is a mind that is easily manipulated, reactive, and incapable of deep thought. To master your mind, you must first master your focus. Just as a warrior sharpens their blade, the Stoic sharpens their attention through deliberate practice. They are not swayed by every notification, nor do they allow fleeting urges to dictate their actions. They create space for deep work, meaningful thought, and the pursuit of wisdom. Begin each day with intent. Decide what deserves your attention and guard it fiercely, as a sentinel standing at the gates of your mind. The modern world is filled with distractions, and each moment wasted on trivial pursuits is a moment lost in the pursuit of wisdom. Train yourself to resist the pull of unnecessary stimuli and focus your energy where it truly matters. Reduce distractions by deliberately shaping your environment. Remove clutter from your workspace, set boundaries on technology use, and practice self-discipline in managing your time. The Stoics believed in controlling what is within one's power, and attention is among the most valuable resources we possess. Allowing your focus to be hijacked by triviality is equivalent to surrendering your most precious asset to external forces. Set time for reflection, as introspection is the forge where wisdom is tempered. The most accomplished minds in history were not those who merely reacted to life, but those who deliberately carved out moments to process their thoughts and refine their actions. By dedicating time to deep contemplation, you solidify your values, reinforce your principles, and ensure that your mind remains sharp and resilient. Practice being present in every task, for presence is the key to mastery. Whether engaging in conversation, reading a book, or performing daily duties, immerse yourself fully in the moment. Train yourself to resist multitasking, as it fractures your attention and weakens your mental discipline. Instead, embrace single tasking, giving your undivided focus to one activity at a time. This not only enhances efficiency, but also cultivates a profound sense of engagement with life itself. Train your mind to remain focused on what matters and discard the rest. Do not allow fleeting impulses or external noise to dictate your attention. Strengthen your ability to filter out distractions and direct your mental energy towards self-improvement, discipline, and the pursuit of wisdom. Each moment of intentional focus is a step toward mental fortitude, and each act of distraction is an erosion of that strength. Choose wisely where you place your attention, for in doing so, you shape the trajectory of your life. Chapter 8. The Strength of Voluntary Discomfort. Modern life offers comfort at every turn. Food is readily available, climate-controlled environments shield us from nature, and entertainment is endless. But ease breeds weakness. The Stoics knew that true strength is not found in indulgence, but in voluntary hardship. When life is too easy, the mind and body grow complacent, losing the resilience required to face true adversity. The human spirit thrives under challenge, and without discomfort, it atrophies like an unused muscle. Seneca practiced voluntary poverty, not because he had to, but because he wanted to ensure he could endure it if necessary. He did it to remind himself that luxury was not a necessity, but a temporary privilege. He did not do this out of self-punishment, but as a training ground for the unexpected difficulties that life could bring. If he ever found himself in misfortune, he would be ready, mentally, emotionally, and physically, because he had already conditioned himself to endure it. Marcus Aurelius trained himself to tolerate discomfort so that luxury never made him soft. He recognized that emperors, surrounded by comfort and excess, were often the most fragile in character. To combat this, he sought out voluntary challenges, pushing himself to embrace discomfort rather than avoid it. This was not just a test of endurance, but a lesson in detachment from physical ease. He knew that comfort could become a prison if one relied upon it too deeply. They understood that suffering by choice strengthens the soul, preparing it for inevitable hardships. The Stoics saw adversity not as an enemy, but as an ally, a force that sharpens character and builds true resilience. When one learns to welcome difficulty rather than fear it, they become unbreakable. Hardship ceases to be a curse and instead becomes a tool for self-mastery. True power lies in the ability to endure what others avoid. The Stoic who has trained themselves through voluntary hardship walks with an unshakable presence in the world. They do not fear loss because they have practiced living with little. They do not panic in discomfort because they have chosen to face it. They welcome adversity as a teacher, knowing that hardship is not an obstacle, but a forge that strengthens the soul. The mind conditioned by voluntary discomfort does not shatter under pressure. It adapts. It recognizes that suffering is a part of life, and that resisting it only amplifies distress. Instead of avoiding difficulty, the Stoic confronts it willingly, refining their endurance like a blade against stone. They understand that enduring discomfort, whether physical, emotional, or mental, expands their capacity to handle future challenges with grace and composure. And when real adversity strikes, they are not broken, they are ready. Unlike those who shrink in the face of hardship, the Stoic stands firm, having already rehearsed resilience. Their mind, tempered by discipline and trained through discomfort, does not succumb to despair or fear. They remain resolute, undisturbed by external conditions, for they have cultivated inner fortitude. When others crumble, the Stoic endures. When others lament their suffering, the Stoic embraces it as an opportunity to grow stronger. They do not merely survive adversity, they transform it into a tool for self-mastery. Chapter 9. The Art of Withstanding Criticism and Praise. Many people live their lives seeking approval or fearing criticism. They allow praise to inflate their ego and criticism to wound their spirit. They become prisoners of external validation, constantly measuring their worth through the eyes of others. But the Stoic knows that both are external judgments, neither defines them. To rely on praise for confidence is to place one's self-worth in the hands of others, and to crumble under criticism is to surrender personal authority over one's emotions. Epictetus taught that we should not concern ourselves with what others think, for their opinions are outside our control. He emphasized that the moment we allow others to dictate our happiness or self-perception, we become their slaves. The truly strong do not seek validation, nor do they crumble under judgment. They remain grounded in their own values, unmoved by fleeting praise or condemnation. They recognize that both applause and critique are impermanent, often given by people who themselves are uncertain, biased, or misinformed. A Stoic sees praise and criticism as mere echoes of the external world, carrying no real weight unless they choose to give it significance. Instead of reacting emotionally, they assess feedback rationally. If criticism contains wisdom, they extract its lessons and discard its sting. If it is rooted in ignorance or malice, they dismiss it as irrelevant noise. Praise, too, is met with the same measured perspective. While recognition for one's efforts may be pleasant, it does not change the core of who they are. Their sense of self-worth is not dependent on fleeting approval, nor is it diminished by baseless disapproval. The Stoic understands that the opinions of others are shaped by their own biases, experiences, and limitations. To live by the judgments of others is to surrender control over one's own mind. The wise do not allow external validation to determine their confidence, nor do they permit insults to dictate their sense of peace. They are not indifferent, but they remain immune to the emotional turbulence that arises from seeking constant affirmation or fearing rejection. Instead of being swayed by external voices, the Stoic relies on the quiet but unwavering voice of reason within. They measure their actions against their own principles rather than against the expectations of society. If they have acted with integrity, they find contentment in knowing they have done what is right, regardless of whether they are met with applause or scorn. This self-assurance is the foundation of true freedom. True freedom is found in self-ownership, the ability to act with integrity regardless of external opinion. The Stoic is not unfeeling or indifferent, but they are unshaken. They recognize that the only opinion that truly matters is that of their own conscience, refined by wisdom and aligned with virtue. This inner stability allows them to navigate life with clarity, unaffected by the transient judgments of the world around them. When receiving praise, remind yourself that it does not increase your worth. When facing criticism, ask yourself if it is constructive. If it is, learn from it. If it is not, let it pass like the wind. Chapter 10. The Power of the Present Moment. The past is unchangeable and the future is uncertain, yet many people live trapped in regret or anxiety, missing the only moment they truly have, the present. They replay past mistakes endlessly, as if dwelling on them will somehow alter history. They agonize over the future, worrying about things beyond their control, as if fear itself could shape fate. But in doing so, they rob themselves of their greatest power, the ability to act in the now. The Stoic understands that presence is power. To fully engage with life, one must be rooted in the now. This is not about ignorance or recklessness, but about clarity. The past can teach, but it should not imprison. The future can be planned for, but it should not be obsessed over. The only time we truly own is the present moment, and wasting it on regrets or fears is an insult to the very life we have been given. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Confine yourself to the present." This does not mean ignoring the past or neglecting the future, but rather it means directing your energy where it matters most, on what can be done in this moment. The past is a lesson, not a dwelling place. The future is a possibility, not a guarantee. The Stoic channels their focus into what can be acted upon right now, knowing that this is where real influence lies. To train the mind to live in the present is to cultivate a warrior's mindset, alert, adaptable, and unburdened by unnecessary distractions. It is to wake each morning not lamenting yesterday's failures or fearing tomorrow's challenges, but instead asking, "What can I do with this day?" It is to approach every task, every conversation, and every challenge with full engagement, undistracted by the ghosts of the past or the illusions of the future. Throughout your day, catch yourself when your mind drifts to past mistakes or future worries. Bring your focus back to the present moment. Ask yourself, what is within my power right now? Act with intention and let the rest go. By mastering the present, you master life itself. The world will continue to test us. Distractions will persist. Negativity will surround us. But those who have trained their minds, who have armed themselves with wisdom and discipline, will remain unshaken. The Stoic does not merely endure life, they command it. They do not react, they respond with wisdom. They do not fear loss, they embrace impermanence. They do not seek control over the world, they master themselves. Your mind is the greatest asset you have. Protect it, strengthen it, live by the principles that lead to true resilience. This is the Stoic way. This is the path to mastery.